Okay, this is my video review of the Dell XT and Dell XT2. On the left here we have the Dell XT, and on the right we have a Dell XT2. Both are very similar. If we take a look here, the Dell XT is a little bit thicker than the XT2. They are very similar in weight. With the original XT, the top part here for the screen is probably a couple millimeters larger. Mine seems to be maybe a little bit bent. I'm not sure if that's all XTs, but you can see there it's bent up a little bit at the top, although it doesn't affect the unit at all. You can also, let's take a look here. On the sides we have sound here, the speaker, the vent for the processor cooling, USB and FireWire. That's on the XT. On the XT2 we have the same, but something has changed here. Motherboard design, cooling design, but the vent has been moved. On the back of the XT we've got power, video, gigabit Ethernet, USB. That's a powered USB there for certain types of devices. And then we've got the ability to scroll here when in touchpad mode and click. Back of the XT2, exactly the same. And on the side of the XT, we've got the Wi-Fi catcher and wireless switch, another USB 2, SD card and PC card slot, and then the headphone jack and mic jack. On the XT2, pretty much the same exact layout, except this port here is ESATA. So they've definitely done a few little upgrades visually here. Most everything is the same. They've moved this part here for lifting, and the hinge design pretty close, but as I'll be able to show you on this one here, if we take a look, there's a much larger gap, and the hinge is just a little bit looser than I would like it to be. You never really notice it, but it has a little bit of a tilt to it. When we look at this one, you can almost open the XT2 with one hand, where the XT won't really let you. But the hinge, it's funny that this one actually feels looser but is harder to open. This one feels tighter, doesn't really tilt at all, and the gap on it looks much more like a standard laptop or standard notebook. So, I mean, it just feels more stable in the XT2, so they've upgraded that a bit. One strange thing I've noticed on this is, even if I turn up both the screens all the way, if you'll take a look here, my XT is quite a bit brighter than the XT2. So that's strange. I've read some other reviews online where people have had a bunch of XTs at work, and for some reason they've had one XT that's much brighter than the others. But it's definitely a lot brighter. And even if I turn them down, so if I take this XT and turn it all the way down, it's very usable. If I take this XT2 and I turn it all the way down, although it has a couple more clicks, I mean, all the way down is pretty low. If I take the XT2 and turn it down maybe 6 clicks, I get pretty similar to that one all the way down. So I think that may contribute too. Last night let's turn both these back up here. Last night I had the XT, and I was reading, of course, over the last couple of days that a lot of people with XTs only get 2 to 2.5 hours of battery life. When I turned my display down halfway on the XT, I was able to pull almost 3.5 hours with Wi-Fi on. I was surfing the web, using OneNote. Occasionally I would watch a little TV or something, but most of the time I was fairly active, probably 75% of the time, and made it probably 3 hours and 25 minutes on this XT. On the XT2, I'd say probably will go 4 to 5 hours. I haven't tried doing a whole night tonight, using it. I may do that tonight or tomorrow night, and when I do a dedicated review of each unit, I may see how much I can get out of it. That was one thing I noticed too. The screen auto dimmed after not using it for a while, which the XT isn't doing that. They're both running the Windows 7 release candidate build, 7100, which is much nicer than the XP Pro that shipped on either one. The Windows 7, everything from the way the touchscreen works, the multi-touch features, handwriting recognition, all of that stuff is, even the responsiveness of the system. I can say I love everything about Windows 7 compared to the XP that shipped on it. Fingerprint reader, I had to download the latest software for that from the website. Windows, the fingerprint reader, and a few other things on both units. We had to go searching for some Vista drivers and some Beta drivers to get everything to work properly. I haven't configured the fingerprint reader on that one yet. That's one thing I've noticed too. I used to have a Dell D420, which the Dell D420 had pretty much very similar design. Not a touchscreen, of course, and couldn't use a pen, but the keyboard, the weight of the unit at 3.5 pounds. The D420, I had a 9 cell at 3.7, but it would have been about 3.2 pounds with a 6 cell. These screens are much brighter, much more colorful, being LED based, and they just seem to run better too. And the build quality is better. The sound, that was one thing I just heard, the sound on there out of these little speakers that are here is much nicer. I've seen some reviews where people didn't like the sound on the XT and the XT2, but I can say that it is much more clear and much more full sounding than the D420 and D430 series. Those just sounded like basically a little miniature $9 clock or something that you would leave, a little clock radio, all crackly, and it just didn't sound good at all. This sounds much nicer. When comparing the two units, they are pretty much the same weight, same size. Maybe this is 0.2 pounds less. But in general, if you're on a budget, you can definitely go with the XT if you can live with 2.5 to maybe 3.5 hours, depending on how you use it, how dim, how nice your screen is. The big bonus that you're going to get out of this is a 5400 RPM hard drive, and you're going to get longer battery life by default. This does have the ATI X1200 dedicated graphics, but since it's an older technology, this one here, actually on the XT2, performs quite well using the Intel 4500 integrated graphics. So I believe that's where they're getting all their battery life savings from. If I take a look at both of these here, we can bring up the Windows Experience Index on them. Let's see here. See, I got a 3.4 on the XT. Might be hard to see. I can post a picture on it though. And then actually over here on the XT2, I got a 3.2. So 4.3 processor, 4.9 memory, 3.2 Windows Aero graphics for the 2D, 4.9 gaming graphics. So actually with this Intel, you probably could do a little better gaming than on the XT with the ATI. Primary hard disk 4.8. So you can see on the XT here, we're getting 3.7 on the hard disk. So that's a big difference. 3D video 3.4, that's a big difference. Aero graphics though is 4.0, so the ATI does win on the 2D graphics for Windows 7. And processor 3.7 and memory 4.2. So even though the score is a 3.2, because of its graphics for Aero, it's still really, it's better than that. This is really, if you don't count that, this when it comes to processor, memory, and hard disk, it's a 4.3, where this one would be a 3.7. So it's going to perform better on the XT2 for most things that you would do. There's 4 buttons here. There's only 3 over here. The fingerprint reader is recessed, where on the XT2 it's flush. But I guess that's probably going to have to do with the fact that this became so much thinner on the XT2 than it does. Yeah, this is way thicker here on the XT. So they weren't able to recess that. In general, though, they're both very nice machines. These can be had on eBay for, let's say, $1,200, maybe a little more. Maybe on a Dell outlet sale, you could get a better deal than that. And these can be had for, $600, $700 on eBay. Sometimes even a little less if you use the live.com rebate. Of course, you're taking your chances. I was pretty lucky and got brand new batteries on these refurbs, and they have a couple years warranty left on them, so that's always nice. I guess check back on our site later and back on YouTube, and I'm going to post individual reviews and then even check out how they run, do a little bit of benchmarking. This was just a comparison of the XT and the XT2, both very similar. You'd enjoy either one.